Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Diana Rivas. I'm an admissions representative with UC Santa Cruz, also UCSC alum. So today, me and my colleague Diana are going to be talking a little bit about the Experiencia Latinx at UCSC. And this is a bilingual event, so you'll notice that we will be transitioning from Spanish to English, as a lot of Latinx students do who are raised in Spanish households. So I'll go ahead and let Diana introduce herself, and then we can go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you, Diana. Hi, everyone. Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Diana Elizabeth Torres. I'm one of the admissions representatives currently serving areas within Southern California. I am a proud alumna. I graduated a few years ago. I won't say the year, but a few years ago in sociology and Latin American and Latino studies. I was part of College 10. I was involved within like the housing office, did some work around there. And then I was also part of one of the student-run organizations, which is called Chale, Chicanos and Latinos Educándose. And I have been working for the university since I graduated, so I'm happy to be here and share my experience with you all.
Perfect. Thanks, Diana. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself because I know that we had a few more people join us. So hello, buenas tardes. My name is Diana Rivas. I'm an admissions outreach representative with UC Santa Cruz. And like me and Diana mentioned, we are also alumni. I was affiliated with Ucsc College. I graduated with a degree in sociology and Latin American Latino studies, and I did a minor in education. As a student, I was very involved in student life, specifically with the Latinx community. So I was a part of El Centro, which is our Chicano Latino Resource Center on campus, as a student program coordinator. And then I was also a part of different student organizations. So I was a part of like a sorority. I was a part of Hermanos Unidos. I was also a part of Los Mexicas, which is a grupo folclórico on campus. So I was very involved on campus. So definitely feel free to ask us any questions that you all have about student life. Like I mentioned, this is an event to talk a little bit about La Experiencia Latinx at UCSC. So we will transition from Spanish to English. We just have to remind ourselves to do so. I know I have to remind myself. But with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. We did have a few questions come in yesterday, so we can go ahead and answer some of those. I guess first we can talk a little bit about our colleges, and I can have Diana share a little bit about the colleges, and then I'll talk a little bit about it in Spanish.
Awesome, yes. So at UC Santa Cruz, we have the 10 residential colleges. These are like 10 communities, like 10 little neighborhoods that are spread out throughout UCSC. Within every residential colleges, you'll find dorms, apartment buildings where you can live out with a group of friends, and academic buildings. Within those academic buildings, you have your academic advisor, housing staff, activity staff that does a lot of programming for the own like residential college for the own community. The 10 residential colleges are spread out throughout UCSC, so we are a large campus. So definitely when you set foot at UCSC, it seems very large, but honestly, by the end of your time, it seems so small. Every residential college is located in a different area. They differ by their theme. So for example, like the theme of College 10 is social justice and community. Kresge is like power and representation. And regardless of your major, you can live at any of the 10 residential colleges. Your academic advisor, like I said, is within that community. So you really have like that small liberal arts feeling, but everyone is part of like, you know, the UC Santa Cruz Banana Slug family. So you also don't feel secluded. The reason why these were created was so that you could have like that small liberal arts really and that really one-on-one and really get to know who you're going to college with. And through your lectures, you meet students across the other residential colleges. So you really get to know all of the communities by the end of your time. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Okay, perfect. So, como está diciendo Diana, tenemos 10 colegios que hacen a la universidad y cada uno está affiliated, so we call it affiliation, con un colegio, y eres parte de ese colegio, so siempre decimos que es como tu comunidad pequeña dentro de la universidad más grande. Entonces es la manera que estudiantes pueden encontrar comunidad y conectarse con otros estudiantes. So hopefully I explained it okay in Spanish. So something else I wanted to talk about, because this event is talking about La Experiencia Latinx, hopefully I can have Diana and I'll also share how is your experience as a Latinx student at UC Santa Cruz.
Yeah, my experience, I feel like everyone's gonna go through their own, pathway and experience. For me, my first year was a little bit rough, I'm gonna be honest. Being like a first generation, being the first female as well, identifying within my family and going away since I did grow up within LA area and then made the trip after high school up to Santa Cruz. It was a little bit rough. Definitely adjusting right to the culture as well. I was a little bit homesick as well, and I wasn't getting out there. So slowly I started getting out there into like the programs, and it was really until I started getting involved within like my own residential college, like within the housing office, that I took on a job within that I met other students. And then once I joined Chale, the Chicanos and Latinos Educándose, one of the retention programs, that's where I really found like a community and kind of like a little home away from home. And through that space, I made friends, and it just like made my experience way better within Santa Cruz itself.
Yeah, similar to Liana, and I'll say this in Spanish as well. I feel like for me, it was also very overwhelming. I'm from the Central Valley. I don't know how we have people joining us from the Central Valley, but for me, it was very different to like what I grew up with. I didn't know anyone when I got to Santa Cruz, and so the best thing that I did was like get involved. So I was a part of EOP, which is the Educational Opportunity Program for first generation low income students, and so that was a way that I was able to connect with students, and then I got really involved in student life. So like I mentioned, I was a part of different student organizations. El Centro, which is a Chicano Latino resource center on campus, really became my home away from home. So it was a really good way for me to connect with other Latinx students and just share our experience, share the language of like being able to like have a conversation in Spanish with like another student, or being able to talk about our families, and being able to like share like the struggles of being away from home. And so that was a really good way that I was able to again like feel like a little community within UC Santa Cruz where I really felt that I could belong. And so it was a really good way again for me to kind of have that home away from home. So ahorita estamos hablando un poco sobre las maneras en que nosotros like, nos involucramos en diferentes organizaciones en la escuela. Para mí fue muy importante ser parte del centro, que es un centro de recursos en la universidad para estudiantes chicanos y latinos. Y allí pude conectar con otros estudiantes que podían hablar mi idioma, el idioma de mis padres, de mi familia. Y allí fui parte de pues otra familia cuando llegué a la escuela. Luego fui parte de organizaciones, bailaba folclórico, también hacíamos community service, o íbamos y, hacíamos campus tours, o invitamos a estudiantes a que visitaran la universidad y aprendieran más de lo que nosotros ofrecemos. Entonces, esa fue una manera en la que yo pude encontrar mi comunidad en la universidad. So something else, a few more questions that we had. So something else I think that always comes up a little bit is like, how does housing work? I know, or how do you get to campus, right? For a lot of us, like I mentioned, I'm from the Central Valley. Diana's from Southern California. She's from LA. So how do our students get home? How do they get to campus? Can you talk a little bit about that, Diana?
Yes. So there are a lot of options, and I feel like you're gonna go through a lot of them, right, and find what feels right to you. Moving in, I definitely did have my parents like drive me up, right, and help me move in. But when it came to like holidays, like Thanksgiving, like that's around the corner, or like winter break, I explored different options. From, you can definitely take a flight if you buy it early enough. It'll definitely be on the more affordable side. But I did also use like Greyhound. I always make sure to travel with someone, just to have like a buddy with you. There's also the Amtrak that some students do use. You can take it from like San Jose into like the LA area, or even further down into like San Diego. I know some students do that as well. And then you also make friends, right? So some of them do take their cars up there, so you can always like get together and, just pitch in for gas and drive down to Southern California. We do also have something that's called like a Zim ride. Yeah, I believe that's what Zim ride, where people post like if they're going to be traveling to different areas, whether it's up to Northern California or down to Central or Southern California, and you can like go in and like reserve a spot. And it is people and students, like the community within UCSC, so there's some like safety around that as well. Hay varias opciones para viajar. Si vienes del centro de California o del sur de California, una de las opciones es viajar por avión. Si compras el boleto con tiempo, te sale un poquito más barato. También hay el Greyhound, los autobuses que puedes usar, el tren, el Amtrak, que sale por decir, aquí en en el área de Los Ángeles, de la Union Station. También creo que en San Diego pueden agarrar el Amtrak y te lleva a la ciudad de San José, que está como a unos 30 minutos de UC Santa Cruz, y hay autobuses que de ahí te pueden llevar de la ciudad de San José a Santa Cruz. Y también dentro de la universidad hay una aplicación que se llama SimRide, donde estudiantes que tienen carros ponen como una notice, una advertencia, oh, voy a viajar, para, no sé, para quizás para San Francisco o para Los Ángeles, y puedes reservar ahí un lugar y nomás pagas por decir unos $30, $40 para ayudarles con el gas. Entonces hay diferentes opciones para poder viajar.
Perfect. Thanks, Sienna. And I know there was a question that came up right now. And feel free to put any questions that y'all have, because me and Diana can talk for hours, right, Diana? But feel free to, if y'all have any specific questions, you can put those in the chat. So one of the questions that came up was if we have a Puente program. So to my knowledge, we don't have a Puente program on campus, but that doesn't mean that you won't find a community like Puente at Santa Cruz. Like I mentioned earlier, we do have a variety of student organizations that are specifically for Chicanx, Latinx students, that are dedicated towards helping students find their community, that are focused on, ensuring that students have the support to succeed academically, and then kind of like, build their home away from home. We do have events such as like Bienvenida, which is our Chicanx Latinx student welcome, where they have all the Chicano Latino orgs tabling. They have like pan dulce, they have tamales, they have pupusas, they have a DJ. They always play, El Caballo Dorado at the end of the night. Which is a really good way for students to, again, find that community. We do like a Dia de los Muertos event through El Centro as well. So there are definitely ways for you to find communities like Puente at Santa Cruz through our different student organizations. And I think I saw, oh, perfect. So there's a question. It says, what's your advice for your student who is Latino but doesn't speak Spanish or feel comfortable joining a club geared towards Latino students?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I feel like everyone should feel comfortable and welcome within all of these spaces. I feel like we all come from different backgrounds and upbringings. And within any space that you find within our campus, you're definitely going to find a community regardless of whether you speak Spanish or you don't. I don't think that's like a requirement per se, right, to be part of these orgs. It's really, like I said, to kind of like build community, find your home away from home, and like a sense of belonging through these spaces.
Yeah, like Diana said, so we have like El Centro. I know when I was a student, like I got to meet students who didn't, they didn't speak Spanish, but they were very in tune with like their Latinx identity. Or for some students, like they were Latinx, but maybe their family, they didn't grow up speaking Spanish, and so they wanted to learn a little bit more about it. It doesn't mean that you can only go to like Latinx orgs. Like you can join any organization on campus. We have over 200 student organizations on campus. So maybe you're interested in, joining, like, I know we have like a King of the Hill club that I would always see postings at the bus stops. We have like organizations that are focused on like sports. So if you want to play, like if you like playing flag football, like we have a student organization for that. If you want to learn how to surf, or you like surfing, there's a club for that, right? So you don't just have to join like orgs that identify with your experience. Sometimes you can also explore something that you are not familiar with. And that's really the fun part about, college, is that you really are able to, expose yourself to different things. I know that there was a question, and maybe you can talk a little bit about it. So it says, where do you access the rideshare information? So traveling from UCSC to LA.
So we do have our own like transportation and parking services within UCSC, and within that website you can find like different ways to, that you can travel. I would definitely start there. I feel like that's a really good resource. I know that there's some pages out there within some of the social media sites as well that are like by UCSC students, so you can look at those too. But I would definitely start within like our UCSC, it's TAPS, so TAPS .ucsc.edu, and they have information there for traveling for our students.
Perfect. And then there was another question about like political organizations on campus. So we do have, like I said, we have over 200 student organizations. So we do have a wide range of political organizations on campus. And so they do have different meetings, and we do have an event called Cornucopia, which, fun fact, means a gathering of slugs. And happens during our welcome week, where all these organizations are tabling. And so that's really a good way for you to go to these specific tables and ask them questions, ask them, when do they meet, what are they about, and again, to kind of connect and build that community early on. I would also recommend that you go to our SOAR website. They're the ones who oversee our student organizations, and they do have a list of all organizations, and they actually have it like grouped. So there's like political organizations, there's Greek life, there's, yes, everything. So that's a really good way that I would recommend that you go and check out if we have a student club that has your interest.
Yeah, and then another thing, even along those lines, there's even like groups within like your residential college. So if maybe you don't want to be part of like the larger UCC student orgs, within your residential colleges, there's going to be like garden clubs, game clubs as well. So you can definitely, start within like your own residential college, and then, get out there within like the larger UCC student orgs if you're like wanting to start on a smaller scale. I did see that there is a question around like, how does housing differ for transfer students? So I can talk a little bit about that. So housing for transfer students is a little bit, well, not different, but we do have like the transfer community that is located at Porter College. You don't have to be affiliated with Porter College to live within the transfer community. So if you feel like you resonated more with like the theme and like the mission statement of another residential college, then you can affiliate yourself with that. And that is where your academic advisor will be at. That is the residential college that you're graduating with, but you'll be living within the transfer community at Porter College. We do also have the Redwood apartments. They're located at Kresge College, and they're right next to each other. For our transfer students that are 24 years and older. So we do have like some older transfer students if you want to live within like those spaces as well. If you want to live within like the residential spaces at the other communities, you also have that option. You just have to work with like the housing staff within that community that you want to live at. So una de las preguntas que salió fue cómo es la housing donde viven los estudiantes para los que se están transfiriendo de un colegio comunitario. Sí tenemos una comunidad que es la comunidad para todos nuestros estudiantes que se están transfiriendo, que está ubicado en el colegio Porter. No tienes que ser parte del Porter College para vivir ahí. Puedes elegir si tú crees que te conectaste mejor con uno de los otros colegios, puede ser parte de ese colegio, pero vivir acá en la comunidad para los transfer students. Y también hay apartamentos que están dentro del colegio Kresge para los estudiantes que son de 24 años o más. También tienen esa opción. Ya cuando acepten ser parte de UCSC, se acepta nuestra oferta de admisión, les van a enviar un formulario que es una housing application, una aplicación donde van a llenar ahí todas sus preferencias y dónde quieren vivir y qué es lo que están buscando.
Perfect. Thanks, Yana. So then another thing, and I can go ahead and take this one, is a little bit about health and safety, right? So sometimes, what if you are away from home and you don't have your mom to like cook for you or to like take care of you? Like, where do you go? So we do have a health center on campus, and we do offer like health insurance for the campus, or we have what's called, when I was a student, it used to be called Cruz Care. It might have changed. And you pay like a quarterly fee, and you're able to go see a doctor if you're ever feeling sick or under the weather. We also have our own on-campus pharmacy. If students have health insurance with their parents, you can waive the health insurance, and then you just have to have like a doctor that's within a certain mile radius in order to ensure that if anything were to happen to you, you have a doctor nearby. And then in terms of safety, we do have our own police department and fire department available on campus. In addition to the Santa Cruz Police Department and Fire Department, so it's like an additional layer of security on campus. All of the campus is very safe. And we do have like a police escort service. So if you're ever out, at the middle of the night studying and you don't want to walk back to your dorm because maybe your too tired or you don't want to walk in the middle of the forest, even though it is very well lit, but we do have deer on campus. And so sometimes, you know, you'll be walking, you hear noise and it's a deer. You can actually call them and they'll pick you up anywhere on campus, which is a really convenient service that I know I use as a student because, again, sometimes you don't want to walk by yourself, so it's nice to have that. So algo que queríamos hablar es de health and safety. So si si su estudiante está enfermo, sí tenemos una clínica en la universidad donde los estudiantes pueden ver a un doctor. También tenemos una farmacia. Entonces los estudiantes, si se sienten mal, pueden ir con un doctor. Y también tenemos nuestros propios estación de policías y bomberos. Entonces, you know, si hay una emergencia en la universidad, los tenemos like, a 5 minutos de los dormitorios y de los edificios. Y también tenemos un servicio de nuestros policías donde si el estudiante está como en la librería a la medianoche y no quiere caminar solo, puede llamarles y luego lo recogen y los dejan en su dormitorio, su apartamento, que es un servicio que yo sé que usé mucho cuando era un estudiante porque a veces uno no quiere estar caminando solo, ¿verdad? Perfect. And like we said, if y'all have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat.
I feel like there's another question. Are there any resources specific to Latina parents, single parents? Do you want to take on it? Yeah.
Yeah, I can go ahead and take it. So we do have like family student housing. So this is for students that have, you know, that have families. You can like get an apartment. You can apply through family student housing. And definitely Diana can answer a little bit more about family student housing because she's a little bit more familiar with it. But we do also have a daycare on campus for students and staff. So that's another way. So students are able, you know, to take time to go to their classes. And then there are student organizations. I don't know specifically we have like a student organization that's specifically for like Latina parents. But if there isn't, I do encourage you to start one. We do have students, you know, that are parents and want to find that community on campus. You can always also get involved with like our Chicano Latino Resource Center on campus. I know that was a way that I actually got to meet a lot of Latina parents that were currently, you know, students. So that's another really good way, again, to connect with students. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about family student housing, Diana.
Yeah, so for family student housing, the application process is a little bit different. You do have to submit a separate application. I mean, you can actually even get in contact with them now if you're going to be transferring like in the next year to kind of learn about the process. But there are apartment spaces. They have like 1-bedrooms, 2-bedroom apartments with like a full-on kitchen, living room, and the daycare is also within like the apartment complex area. So it is a separate application process.
Perfect. And then there was a question about, are there any resources that students can use for bettering their Spanish so that they can participate in more Latinx groups? So like I said, you don't have to speak Spanish in order to participate in any of our Latinx student organizations, but you'll definitely hear it. I know I would always hear it in the orgs that I was a part of, but students are very open to like teaching it to each other. Another thing that students will do is if you want to better your Spanish, you can actually take Spanish classes through the university. So a lot of times students will do that. You could also study abroad in a Spanish-speaking country. So I know I had a friend who actually went to, she spoke Spanish, but she wanted to go to Brazil. So she actually learned Portuguese and she went to study abroad in Brazil. So that's another really good way for you to, again, learn a new language or build on the language that you already know. Perfect. I'm reading to see if there's any other questions. Feel free, like I said, if y'all have any questions, you can always put them in the chat. And then we'll be more than happy to answer it. So there was a question that came in that says, what would you say about UC Santa Cruz admissions what do we look at when it comes to acceptance? So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, Diana, and then I can always add.
Yes, of course. So what do we look for? So UC Santa Cruz, let's see, well, we definitely look right there. You're meeting the minimum requirements, of course, right? Whether you're a freshman or a transfer student. There's no like single factor that determines our admissions decision. Like we're not just going to look at your GPA and be like, oh yeah, they're going to get in, they're not going to be admitted. It's really everything about you as a student. So it's towards your benefit to include everything that you have done throughout high school within the UC application. We take a look at your GPA, your classes. You know, some students have like maybe they had a rough start freshman year, but then by senior year they do really well. So we take a look at like, that academic trajectory. We take a look at what you do outside of the classroom. Are you engaging in activities from like volunteer work, community service, clubs, organizations? Are you taking on leadership roles, right? Your commitment over time, like did you do it over just 1 week versus like, 4 years? And then within the PIQs, the personal insight questions, they're not essays, they're not creative writing prompts. They're like, kind of think of them as interview questions. That is where we get to know more about you. We kind of learn more about you through using your own voice, your story, right? What you want to share with us. So being very direct and concise. And something that I always kind of hear within some of the student conversations that I have is, oh, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, I'm a very humble person, and in no way are we going to think that you're bragging. The purpose of the application is really for you to brag about yourself, all of your accomplishments, what you're most proud of, what's most important to you, because you're competing with thousands of applicants, right? So you want to make sure that you're including everything that you have done. So then I feel like I probably missed something, so please add.
No, yeah, like Diana said, look at your overall application. So we really look at every factor. So it's not just academics, it's your extracurriculars, it's what you do inside of the classroom, it's what you do outside of it. It's, whether you take on any leadership roles, whether you work a part-time job or you take care of your siblings. All of this really gives us a sense of who you are as a student. And something I always tell students is if it's not on your application, it's like it didn't happen. So if there's that you really want us to know, you want to make sure that you include that in your application, because again, if you don't include it, there's no way for us as readers to know. And so the personal insight questions are really an opportunity for you to share those things that aren't already on your application. So that's where you can talk about, the things that you're passionate about or the things that you enjoy. And so you definitely want to take advantage of those as a way to build yourself as an applicant. And I know that there was, and like Anna mentioned, we look at a variety of factors. So like there is no GPA that you need to have that's automatically going to guarantee you admission, because again, we do look at a variety of factors and we do accept a wide range of students across the board for GPAs as well as extracurriculars and honors and rigor and things like that. Perfect. Like I said, if y'all have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and then me and Diana will answer them, hopefully. So I guess one question I feel like is very, I know it was very common for me, and it's something is like kind of how do you have like that conversation with your parents, as like a Latinx student, if, if you're from Southern California, like you, Diana, how do you have that conversation with your parents if you decide to, move away and go to Santa Cruz or any other campus?
Yeah. It can definitely be a tough conversation. We're very used to being like in family, right? Very being close and connected and getting together often. So for me, it was definitely a little bit not tough, but it was definitely like a deep conversation that you have to have, because they obviously don't want you to go away, especially if you're like the first one to go away from your family. So I think it was just really sitting down, kind of looking at all the positives, right? I know my financial aid package was really good, so that was definitely like a pro for me. And once we visited the campus, like my parents were able to visit the campus, they absolutely fell in love with it as well. So I think that was definitely something that helped as I was like moving away. And we were in constant communication. It wasn't like I was, bye, I los miro, see you later. We definitely still kept communication. I will let them know, when I'm going to be having classes, like when I'm able to like talk. So definitely, some boundaries as well, letting them know when I was going to be in class or work, because I was also within work. And then you still get to visit during like the holidays as well. So that's always really nice where you can reconnect and continue with your family.
Perfect. Thank you, Diana. I know I share very similar to like your experience. I'm like, oh, perfect. So another question that came up, and I can go ahead and take it, was what if I can talk a little bit about the freshman experience versus the transfer experience, right? So, as a freshman, you do come in right out of high school, so you have those 4 years to really, figure out what it is that you want to study, what is your area of interest. So you have more like those first 2 years is really a time for like exploration, right? It is very common for students to change their major. I changed my major like 3 times when I was a student, so it is very common. But we do have academic advising available on campus, and so they will help you, see what your areas of interest are, what courses you need to declare your major, what do you need to graduate, and things like that. As a transfer, I always tell students that, it is a lot more faster because you only have 2 years to graduate once you come in, and you come in with your major already selected, so you really are only, you're going to be taking the rest of your upper division courses and any GE courses that you're missing. As a transfer student, I have friends that were transfers and they had a really great experience. But again, you want to take advantage of your time on campus because it is so limited. So you kind of want to hit the ground running. But the transfer community, like Diana mentioned, is a really great opportunity for you to get that on-campus experience because your roommates will be transfers, your RAs will be transfers. So you're really able to experience like what does it feel as like a first year living in the dorms, meeting new people, but you're not surrounded by freshmen, right? Which a lot of times, freshmen, a lot of them are right out of high school. So they're 17, 18, they're still, figuring it out. So that really is the difference, I feel, between like a freshman and a transfer. But at the end of the day, whichever route you choose, it is a really great opportunity, whether you come in as a freshman or come in as a transfer at Santa Cruz, to take advantage of everything that we offer, because we do have a lot of opportunities. It's just a matter of, again, taking advantage of them. But we do have resources available on campus to help you navigate that. Now, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Diana.
I think the only thing that I would add would be that we do have STARS, which is the Services for Transfer and Reentry students, and they have amazing staff within that center that really work to welcome you, like even before you step foot onto our campus. They do like a lot of mixtures, a lot of events for all of our students, and they even have a lot of like services for our commuter transfer students as well. If you're going to be commuting, like living off campus, they have like lounge areas. You can like a fridge and microwave to like store your food and heat it up as well. So STARS is always like a really good spot to get to know as well for transfer students.
Perfect. So then there was another question about, and I guess we can kind of talk about both of these things, which is one, like, can we talk a little bit about being like a first generation college student at UC Santa Cruz? And then, what makes someone eligible for the EOP office? So I don't know if you want to talk about it, and then I can also add to it.
Yes. So for EOP, it's the Education Opportunity Programs Office. They provide personal academic support for first generation college students that come from disadvantaged like backgrounds or communities. So within the UC application, you have to like select an interest for it if you want to be considered for EOP. If you're not like considered for EOP, once you're on our campus, you can work with the EOP office to become part of it, right, and join. They have a lot of like resources for students, like a huge library. So if you ever need a book, you can always like use and get a library from the book from there and not have to pay for it. They have like peer advising. They have like additional mentorship as well. So you can always like connect with the staff and students there. And then when it comes to like first generation, we do have the first generation initiative at UCSC. And again, they do like a lot of work around that, from having like workshop. They do events for our students. You can even sign up to receive like a first generation like t-shirt as well, and like some college gear. So that is again to kind of like reinforce and introduce all of our students into our community.
Yeah, and kind of going off of that, you will, the first gen initiative does also highlight like first gen faculty, which I think is really great because you can connect with faculty who are also the first in their family to go to college. And so I know that was my experience, that I was able to connect with faculty and they were able to tell me like, oh, I was the first one to go to college. And I was like, oh, so am I. So again, it's really a great way for you to connect with others and see like, oh, okay, like, they did it, I can do it too. Especially as like a first gen, I think that sometimes, we feel overwhelmed and we're just like, oh my God, like how will I finish, or like how will I survive, right? And so it's really nice to know that there are people there that have also gone through it, and now they're professors at UC Santa Cruz. Another question, and it's kind of a little bit off of being first gen, but the food, like what do our students eat? I know there was a few questions that came in from yesterday about like food. So Deanna, can you talk a little bit about food on campus?
Yes. So we have several food options. So we actually have 5 dining halls, so like 5 cafeterias, and then we have 13 like slash cafes, restaurants that are spread out throughout the colleges, as well as some of the main areas like McHenry Library. And then within the Quarry Plaza, which is one of kind of like a central location where a lot of the students get together throughout the day. They have some restaurants there. We serve our vegan, our non-vegan students. So there's a lot of options, in our dining halls actually post their menu for all of like the dining hall, so you can always know ahead of time what they're going to be serving and go to the dining hall that you want to eat that specific food. So sometimes, you know, we would go after like, oh, they have like, you know, really good pizza at a certain dining hall, so you would always go there for that item, or like pasta at another this place. But they always have like salad bars, cereals, yogurts, desserts, and different options for our students. And they even have like little place cards. So if you're like gluten free, for example, you'll know what ingredients were being used within every food that's being made. We do also have a 30-acre organic farm within UCSC. So shout out if you're interested in agroecology. It is like a new major, and about 30% of the produce within all of the dining halls are from our own organic farm. So you're eating like their own veggies and fruits from UCSC.
Perfect. And then I can take this next question, which is asking about dorming. So like Diana mentioned earlier, we have our 10 residential colleges, and we call it like a residential learning community. So like our residential buildings are right next to our classes. And so students are again able to, you know, have easy access to advisors, to their classes. In terms of dorming, we do have like singles, doubles, triples. We also have some quads. We have co-ed floor as well as like single gender floors. I know when I was a student, I lived in an all-girl floor my first year, and then I lived in a co-ed floor my second year, and then I lived at a spot called The Village on campus. Dorming, I really like it because, again, especially as like a first year, you know, it's an opportunity for you to connect with other students. In terms of, you know, how roommates are selected, and Anna can obviously talk a little bit more about this because she did work for the housing office. But after you submit your intent to register, after you get admitted, you will complete a survey from our housing office. And so there you'll, after, you know, you get your college affiliation, you'll do a housing survey where it'll ask you questions like, you know, what are your habits? Are you a morning person? Do you go to sleep late? Would you describe yourself as, you know, a cleaner person? Things like that. You want to make sure that you're being as honest as possible, because based on your responses, that's how you'll get placed with your roommate if you don't already know a student that you want to live with or dorm with. And so you want to make sure that you have similar habits, because you don't want to say, you know, it's not what you would like to be, it's what you really are, right? So if you would like to be a morning person, but you usually wake up late, you want to make sure that you put that you tend to wake up late, so that way they'll place you with someone who has a similar habit, because you don't want your roommate to wake you up at 6 in the morning because they are a morning person, right? So again, you want to be as honest as possible. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that, Diana.
No, I feel like you captured it all.
Perfect, thank you. So I don't know, is there, like I said, feel free, if y'all have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and then me and Diana can talk a little bit more about them.
There was one that came up. Any recommendations of restaurants that have good Latinx food?
So personally for me, I don't know if Diana will agree, but I'm going to Los Pericos in downtown Santa Cruz. They have really great, I think that was like the closest thing that like I found that had really good like Mexican food. So for me, I would recommend Los Pericos. Sometimes what was that other one that was off of Mission? I'm blanking out on the name. That one was okay.
Yeah, you'll definitely find different spots across like Santa Cruz that have like there's like a really good pupuseria too that's like near like Los Pericos, just around the corner as well. And like around some of the main streets within like Santa Cruz, you'll find good spots. Within campus, the restaurants have changed a little. So the most recent one that they have would be Vivas, and that's like a really good spot as well. We also have there's like this bowl place as well. So there's different options within every like cafe restaurant that you go to.
Yeah, I would also say for me, I love like going to like our events from like El Centro on campus. Because again, El Centro is for our Chicanx, Latinx students. And so they always host events that are kind of geared towards, our students.
Mhm.
And so for us, like we would always have like tamales. Like there's this place called El Rosal, which is like a panaderia, but they also make tamales. So we would, have tamales for the event. I really like, I mean, they're not as good as my mom's, right? But a really good way for me to feel like, oh, this feels like home. And we would have someone that would actually make pupusas there for our event. So like at our bienvenida. I know someone asked about like if there's any bailes. So like we do have like the bienvenida. They do have a DJ,
Mhm.
and there is like dancing at the end of the night. And then we also have an event called Pachanga, which is a partnership with our African American Resource and Cultural Center. And they do have like bands that will like come. I know one year we had like Las Cafeteras. And a few other bands, so that's another good way. I also know that sometimes students will go out dancing, and like I don't know if you know any other places, Yana, but I always know that like in San Jose, like sometimes students will all together, and they'll go see different like bandas that go. I think I went one time to like see one, so that's another really popular one.
Yeah, I think the really cool thing about our location is that we're very close to like larger cities, even though Santa Cruz kind of like on a smaller scale. So there's like San Jose, so you'll definitely find more like restaurants, venues out there that you can go and explore. And then there's the Bay Area, San Francisco as well. So sometimes over the weekends you'll get together with a group of friends, like rent a car and go out there and see the different areas and some of the touristy places.
Yes, I agree. And like I said, there is definitely places where there is good Latinx food, so like me and Diana mentioned. But you can also cook it yourself, right? So like if you do live in the apartments, you do have your own kitchen. So that's a really good way for you to again cook. I know that I didn't know how to cook when I got to Santa Cruz, and so it was definitely like a learning curve for me, like calling my mom, asking her to tell me like how do I make rice, which is also you'll learn because when you move away, it's an opportunity for you to learn new things.
Mhm. Yeah, and to further add to that, within like the residential colleges, they have like community spaces, like lounges that do have like a kitchen included. So sometimes you'll just get together with your roommates or with someone within the floor, and between all of you can cook something. I know also within like the resource centers or ethnic and identity resource centers, they do a lot of programming as well, where they bring food as well in catering. So that's always like a really good spot to go and get food maybe in between like study breaks.
Perfect. And I know that there was a question that was submitted before that was asking a little bit about Greek life, so I can definitely talk about that. Like I mentioned, I was a part of Greek life when I was a student at Santa Cruz. So we do have Greek life on campus. We have, I think, a little bit over 20 Greek organizations. And then again, each Greek org is like different. So we have some orgs that are more like professional based. We have some that are more like community service oriented. We have local chapters, but we also have like statewide chapters and like national chapters. So Greek life, again, I really recommend it. I really had a great time. It really just depends on what you're interested in. The one that I was a part of was a multicultural sorority. So a lot of us identified as like Latinas, and we were like a community service and academics based like organization. So we did a lot of community service within Santa Cruz, but we also, would do like study hours and we would host events. So it's a pretty good way for, again, students to find community and connect with other students who have similar backgrounds, experiences as themselves. Even now after graduating, I am still like involved. So I always tell students that, your experience is what you make of it. So, if you are involved and you are, getting connected with students, and like that's going to continue even after you graduate, if you join. Okay, like I said, because I think we have some people joining. If y'all have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and then me and Diana will answer them.
Yeah, I think there was a question, do students in the dorms have access to a kitchen somewhere else in the campus? So I did touch on that, and yes, you do. Like within the residential colleges, there's common spaces, community spaces that you can use. And within the residential buildings, they all typically have like a kitchen on the first floor that anyone can access. If you're living within the dorms though, you do have like your meal plan, so you can access like the dining halls, like as many times as you want, like within the day. So most students, like definitely their first year, they're just using like the dining halls.
Yes, and I second that. I feel like my first quarter, I treated like my meal plan like a buffet, because I had the 7 day meal plan, so I would just like go in like anytime I just wanted like a bowl of cereal, I would go into the dining hall. But then afterwards, I was like, okay, you have to start building like healthier habits. So then, I would like do better, and I ended up doing like a 5 day meal plan because a lot of times on the weekends, like I would tend to go with my friends, or like because of the organizations that I was a part of, we would always have like weekend events. And so then I kind of felt like, oh, you know what, maybe I don't need a 7 day meal plan. Maybe I need a 5 day meal plan. So that was something that I did. But I really like the food. And like Diana said, you have a lot of different options. I don't know if Diana mentioned, but sometimes the dining halls will rotate like meatless Mondays, which is basically like they'll take turns, and like every Monday they'll offer only meatless options. And so that's really great for students that are like vegan or vegetarian. Okay, let's see.
I think there's a question about a housing guarantee. So how can you guarantee housing on campus for the following year? To my understanding, at the moment, we don't actually have a housing guarantee because of COVID-19, but we are prioritizing all of our new first-year students and transfer students within university housing. We hope to return to our pre-COVID housing guarantee years.
Perfect. And then there was a question about what's our favorite spot on campus. It's a good question. I feel like for me, it was definitely ethnic resource centers. So like I mentioned, I was a part of like the Chicano Latino Resource Center. And so we are housed with the ethnic resource centers. They're on the third floor of the Bay Tree Bookstore. If y'all ever visit campus, I do encourage you to visit them. And so they house our 4 ethnic resource centers. And that for me was like my favorite spot on campus because one, there was always food. So like, I was like they always had food there. But then it was also great because it was a way that I found my community. So like a lot of times, like we would either all get together and we were like studying, or we were watching TV, or we would watch like a movie, and it was just a way for us to like get together and connect. And then we would host a lot of events there. So that was also another reason why I was there all the time, because I was working. But it was a really good way for me to just like connect, and I would get to see like all my other like peers. And so it was just nice to kind of have like that place that like I knew that I could just, go sit down, and like people would be like, how are you doing today, Diana? And that for me was like my favorite spot.
I think for me, I would have to say the East Field. So the East Field is where you'll find like our like physical, like athletics and recreational like the gym, the basketball courts. They have volleyball as well. And they have like benches that are overlooking like all of Santa Cruz, like all of the ocean, and even on clear skies, you can see all the way through Monterey Bay. So sometimes it was just I'm taking a walk down there between like my breaks, maybe doing a little bit of homework down there, and then just heading up back into like my class or back into like my dorm. So I think that the East Side was definitely my favorite spot to me when I needed, like some me time, some self-care.
Yes, and I think the campus is like it just lends itself to like feeling like just like a sense of peace. Because again, it's in the middle of the forest, but then there's certain parts on campus where you can literally see the ocean. So I always tell students that like you really do get the best of both worlds on campus. So there's a question about, is there an office where you can apply for a work study? How do we know what jobs are available for students who are awarded work study?
This is a really good question. So I can start it off, and then yeah. Okay, so so to apply for work study, that's actually part of your FAFSA, part of the free application for federal student aid. That is typically where you request for it. If you don't receive any, then you can work with our financial aid and scholarship office once you're on our campus to try to get some work study. If you don't have it, there are still like student jobs on campus that you can take on even without work study. And the spot to go for all of those listing would be our career center. So if you go to like careers.ucc.edu, they have the listings of all of the jobs within like our university.
Yes, and we do have it's called the ER system, I think, or the employee request system. I don't know if
Mhm.
it's changed. Was that when I was a student?
Mhm.
But there, like Dana mentioned, you can see a list of all work study and non-work study jobs available. And we do have a variety of jobs on campus, right? So, you know, the library hires students, our advising offices hire students, the dining halls hire students, and they hire work study as well as non-work study jobs. So that's one of the benefits with, you know, working on campus. I always tell students that I encourage you to work on campus if you're able to, because, you know, employers on campus know that your priority is to be a student. And so a lot of times, you know, our students work under 20 hours or less, sometimes less. I know that when I first started my freshman year, I worked only 5 hours a week. And so that was really helpful because, again, it was just getting extra money. So whenever I would, you know, hang out with my friends on the weekend, like I know I had money to like pay for my food. But also, you know, as time went by, I got more involved. So then I started working for like our advising office. I worked at the mailroom at Oaks College when I was a student. And then again, I worked at El Centro my last 2 years. So there are a lot of opportunities for students to work on campus. And like Dana said, the Career Center is a really great resource. They also help you with like cover letters, resumes. They help you for life after graduation. So it's a really great resource that you have on campus, especially if you are interested in working. Okay, and then I'll go ahead. We have about 9 minutes. So I want to make sure that we answer some of the questions that came in before. So I guess me and Diana will take turns. So one of the questions is there a shortcut to get to the science library?
Well, it depends where you're coming from. But yes, you will find that there's shortcuts to get from one place to another. We have a lot of bridges within UCC that connects the kind of like all of the residential colleges and some of the main areas and buildings. So yes, there's definitely shortcuts, and we do have maps as well that you can see, like, you know, what pathways you can take, and that's typically where you're gonna be, you know, figuring out like your first year. So yes, there are shortcuts, and it depends where you're coming from.
Yes, I agree with Diana. There are definitely shortcuts. I think my first quarter was me kind of just learning like how to get through
Mhm.
campus because there are a lot of just bridges and little paths that you can
Mhm.
take. That I was sometimes I would if I had time I'd be like, oh, I wonder where this goes. And I
Mhm.
would just like, you know, cross the bridge. So depending on where you're coming from campus, it'll depend on like what's the fastest way to get there. Another question that we had is when will the cafes open? To my knowledge, they are open. I don't know if that not all of them are open, but I know that a few of them are open. We are housing students on campus, so there are cafes open, but you can also, you know, go to the cafes off campus. There's a lot of different options off campus as well. And in terms of, you know, getting through Santa Cruz, we do have the Santa Cruz Metro buses that run through campus,
Mhm.
and those are completely free with your student ID. And those get you throughout Santa Cruz, so they'll definitely take you downtown if you ever want to get coffee downtown. And then Diana, you kind of talked about this, but just want to make sure that we answer it. So what are there any microwaves available on campus for commuter students?
Yes, there definitely are. So within our ethnic and identity resource centers, you'll definitely find access to those there. Within other resource centers, like I talked about, STARS, the services for transfer reentry students. I think within the library there might be one, if I remember correctly. And then within like some of the advising or like housing offices, they do have those services for our students. And like I said, we do have like community spaces within the residential colleges, like our lounges, community lounges, and you can also access those too. Mhm.
Perfect. And then we have two more questions, so I'll ask this one and then we can answer the other one.
Mhm.
So one of them is how do I become Sammy the Slug? So for those of you that don't know, our mascot is a banana slug. We have them on campus, and our mascot's name is Sammy the Slug. So our athletics and recreation center is starting a Sammy Hype Squad. And students can apply to join to be Sammy. So if any of you want to become
Mhm.
Sammy the Slug for our events, I definitely encourage you to join the Sammy Hype Squad that's getting started. So you can, you know, get into the school spirit. So I think unless you all have any questions, I have one more question that came in. And I feel
Mhm.
like this is a good question to kind of close it off, which is what's the biggest advice that we have for post-grad students? So I think I'm just going to go with just general advice, especially for those of you, you know, that are currently applying or planning on applying.
Mhm.
I don't know if you have any advice, Diana.
Ooh, let's see. I think my biggest advice would be to get involved. I really wish someone would have told me that. Like I previously mentioned, my start was a little bit rough, right? So I feel like if you get, if you get to know all of the orgs, be a part of as many as you like, right? Go and talk to your professors. I wish someone would have told me that early on. Like, go and talk with them. They have office hours. Like, they're there to support you and guide you on your educational journey as well. And they know of so many like resources, not only within UCC, but outside of us, and opportunities. And being part of like orgs, being part of like the clubs or the ethnic and identity resource centers, being involved like within your residential college as well. All of those connections and the networking that you do will definitely help you and benefit you after you graduate. So I really think it's taking advantage of everything that you have access to, and kind of like, taking it all in, because all of that will help you once you transition out of our campus.
Yeah, I think kind of similar to Diana, get out of your comfort zone. I know that sometimes it can be overwhelming, especially if you're not familiar with the area, if you don't know anyone. But, get involved, ask for help. I wish that was something that I would have done earlier, because there are a lot of resources available on campus. Something that you'll learn with our staff is that they are very committed to our students. They want to make sure that you don't just come in, but that you stay and you graduate. And so they're there, and I hear a lot from like faculty or like advisors that say that students don't visit them, right? So again, take advantage of those resources, ask for help, and get involved, because like Diana said, like those connections are going to stay with you even after you graduate. So you want to make sure that when you leave, you have those connections, because those connections are going to help you again for that life after graduation. And with that being said, I think we can go ahead and close it off. We want to thank all of you for joining us today on our Experiencia Latinx at UCSC. We hope that we're able to answer some of your questions. For those of you that are applying this fall, please do not forget that the deadline to apply is November 30th. Something I always tell students is do not wait until the last minute, because you don't want your power to go out, your internet to crash, and you lose your opportunity of applying. So please make sure that you apply ahead of time. I don't know if there's anything else that Diana wants to add before we go ahead and close it off.
No, I feel like you captured it all. The only thing would be to take advantage of other virtual events that we are hosting through like our admissions office. We have like virtual tours, some informational sessions as well. And there's representatives out there that are here to support you and guide you through the application process as well. So like kind of like going off what Diana said, don't be shy. Definitely ask for help, because we want to, to hopefully be welcome into UCSC and become a banana slug.
Perfect. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And I hope that you have a great rest of your Wednesday. And hopefully we'll see you again. Bye, everyone.